have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Hey.
Aaron, hey, bubby. Hey.
Hey.
It's a little brisk outside, ain't it?
Yeah, it's a little nippy.
Yeah, a little nipple. A little too sad of them.
Oh, you coming on to me because it's Valentine's Day?
Oh, you betcha. You know, I'm just trying to get things warmed up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's bloody nice of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And so I gotta ask, because we didn't talk much about this on the previous episode, but whenever I announced we are watching the remake of My Bloody Valentine, a film that you did not really care for per se, how do you feel?
I mean, this one is probably gonna have what the last one lacked, and that's the third dimension. I'm really looking forward to the depth that it adds.
I'm really sorry, but I don't have a 3D TV, so no 3D will be happening on this episode. I know. I need to work on my 3D films.
I'm still gonna make all kinds of 3D jokes the entire time we watch it.
That's perfectly fine.
It's like I can touch you. You ever watch that?
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, you know the my spoon is too big.
Yes,
and all that
yeah,
shit.
okay,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I forgot. Yes, I have seen it.
Yeah,
Retcon that. I have seen it.
That's one of the is he gets 3D glasses, do-do-do-do-do-do. And he's just like touching another person. He's like, it's like I can touch you. Anyway.
Well, I'm gonna have to check that out. Holy cow!
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
for
a blast from the past. I'm bringing up all kinds of the dumb movies that I watched over and over in my childhood.
No, nothing wrong with that. I'm glad you're able to bring perspective on that. You know, it makes the podcast grand, makes it much more richer.
Yeah. Just bringing in that old school YouTube perspective back before they were owned by Google.
Yes, Google. Google. So I actually do have more recollections with this film than I do the original, because this was like a popular film whenever we were in high school era there. You know, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to watch My Bloody Valentine 3D
I do remember
at theaters.
some cheesy trailers for it in the theaters, I believe. But
Yeah, but aside from that, I never heard anything else about it. Like, it was just like, oh yeah, we're going to see it, and then just disappeared there. But aside from third dimensions that might pop out with this, are you concerned going into this, or are you hopeful going into this?
I think it's probably gonna be funny, because if the only thing I remember, and I could be totally fabricating this memory, but I seem to remember a trailer that involved like My Bloody Valentine 3D, and then like the pickaxe like goes through the glass of the screen and it's like whoosh, and I don't know if that actually happened or not, but I just feel like Spy Kids level 3D effects are gonna happen. You know what I mean? And it's gonna be even funnier without the glasses. They're gonna be like, whoa, you know, and nothing's gonna be happening. So
yeah, well, you're right about the trailer. I'm pretty sure that did happen. That was in the trailer there. So yes, I can't wait to dig into this thing. So we will be right back whenever we go watch My Bloody Valentine 3D.
Whoa! How many dimensions can they pack in this movie?
Probably 3.
Oh.
The third dimension. It's like I can touch you!
And we are back from watching My Bloody Valentine 3D. And Aaron, how you feeling, bubby?
Oh, wow. Hey, man. Never had so many things jump out at me since I opened that can of spring snakes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm sure you probably were not disappointed with all of the 3D effects or 3D effects in 2D.
It was great. This is just the kind of the movie to insert that level of, you know, cheesy things coming out the screen, and it's all telegraphed. It's all great. Every time they swing a pickaxe, I'm like, yeah, this is coming out of the screen somehow at me.
Yeah.
And I was never disappointed.
Yeah, maybe one day I'll invest in a 3D TV to truly experience My Bloody Valentine 3D. But aside from 3D effects, how are you feeling as compared to after watching the original one?
I mean, a lot of things are benefit from just advances in film technology. Even though I don't know that the script was necessarily anything better than the first one. It was it was definitely a cheesy kind of campy movie. It's definitely more entertaining, just action packed and full of stupid stuff. It's exactly what you think of when you think of like a B movie. Horror movie. Is just like tits and blood, and now in 3D. What more could you ask for?
Yeah. Not gonna lie, whenever I got around to finally watching this, because like I said, even though I had heard about it whenever it was in theaters playing, I never went to go watch it because I'm just like, again, I just never really went out to theaters too much. But it was actually my wife who brought it up because she's like, oh, you should watch it. You know, I really like it a ton because she's a big fan of Jensen Ackles, all the supernatural whatnot. And so whenever I watch it, I was genuinely surprised because whenever I think of horror remakes, instinctively, like just with any remake, typically I usually think, okay, it's not going to be as good as the original. But I would argue, like, this may be a hot take here for the horror community, but I think it's about as good as the original for me anyways. I mean, it definitely has some downfalls, and watching it through another time, there's definitely some stuff that I picked up. I'm like, okay, that doesn't strike me as good. It kind of sticks out more, but it's a really fun movie. Just like you said, it's a really fun kick back, laugh with your friends sort of flick. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard you giggle with so much joy throughout any film there. But, I mean, the giggles were necessary. It's definitely over the top with its action.
Yeah, it's gratuitous, and, it's not particularly well acted in any parts, and it's, but, like, that's not what you're here for, You're here for people getting killed with a pickaxe, and it delivers that in every way that you can fathom. So.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and jump into the story a little bit because it's fairly similar to the first story, but there is a couple of changes. So basically, obviously, this film takes place more in modern day, or what was then modern day back in like 2009. Where basically after a mining accident happened with Harry Warden, whenever Harry Warden was rescued out of the mines, he pretty much woke up and started going on a good old killing spree.
Oh, yeah.
And so since then, the town has been very wary about it. And while that was going on, the one person that accidentally caused the mine to collapse was Jensen Ackles, who plays the character Tom Hannigan, who's the son of the mine owner, disappears after the incident there, and then 10 years later comes back into town when all of a sudden Harry Warden is about to strike again whenever it's told that Tom's about to trade in his stock to sell the mine, which is basically the town's livelihood. And with the return of Harry Warden, everybody's wondering, is Harry Warden back from the dead? Supposedly he was gone. Did he ever actually die? And so there's like this whole big mystery that starts to unfold as the plot progresses. And I have to give major props to the plot personally, that they didn't just retread the exact same ground beat for beat, not change a single thing.
Right.
That they actually did change up a lot of the flow, because like, in the first one, there's a similar thing to where basically Tom is gone for a period of time and then comes back into town. And it's just basically like a whole bunch of like the mining friends hanging out, and they decide to have a party at the mine. Whereas this one is definitely more of a mystery and doesn't focus too much on the mine. Like the mine is present there, but it's not like the main focal point. It's not like a slasher in a mine.
Right.
And I think that's really personally, I think that's really awesome that they didn't just do the same beat for beat, because that's the thing with like remakes that I get a little tired of, is the fact that they just try to copy the same thing they did, but it's not as effective.
Right.
You know, because you have that to compare to. Whereas this film, I feel like if it does make a callback to the original film, it's done so in a way that if you didn't know about the original film, yeah, it wouldn't stick out. It just, you know, flows in naturally. But for people that saw the first film, there's a lot of stuff I'm like, oh, that's a cool callback.
Yeah, there are definitely a few scenes that I was like, oh, they're kind of referencing something that happened in the other movie. Like, especially there's a scene where somebody's running through the little mining outfits that are like in the wash or whatever, and they keep springing down, and I was like, oh, that exact jump scare happened in My Bloody Valentine, but it didn't feel like cheap. It was like, I feel like they were doing like a little homage back to it.
Which I'm really a big fan of. I think like there needs to be more remakes of films that weren't like perfect to begin with, because even though I love the original My Bloody Valentine, I'd be remiss not to say that it doesn't have its flaws.
I would argue that those are the types of movies that need to be remade. Why are we remaking movies that were already great when you're just gonna do worse? Like, why are you trying to revive that whenever you could take a movie that like had a good idea but just kind of sucked, or like was a cult classic but didn't hit the big screen, and revive that energy? So I'm all here for the remake of My Bloody Valentine, because I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought it was it was a neat idea and a neat atmosphere, and so I'm kind of glad that they went back and were like, okay, let's breathe some life into this one, rather than like, let's make Halloween for a 10th time or whatever.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, I totally agree with that, and so I don't know. I'm hesitant to say this because I don't feel like I've seen every like horror reboot or remake. But as it stands, this is probably my favorite, if not at least one of the top horror remakes I've seen. Because anytime I revisit a horror remake or reboot or something like that, I'm just like, I just feel like this is just a weaker version. Like, sure, there's like a cool ideas sometimes thrown in, but as a whole product, it's eh. And again, this film, especially watching it a second time through, a lot of its flaws do kind of stick out. Again, some of the acting is pretty mediocre, like some of the line deliveries there, but fortunately for me, I was just able just to kind of laugh it off, because again, it's just kind of a over the top cheesy horror film. So that's kind of the nice thing about it. But that's one thing that I appreciate about this film is the plot. It revives the original while also not just copying it. So I think that takes a lot of intuition there, just being like, what if we take the similar story but then just kind of work around with it. So major kudos to them. I know I've mentioned some of the characters here already, so let's how about we talk about the cast, Aaron?
Let's do that.
So let's start off with our main handsome fellow, Jensen Ackles, playing Tom Hanniger. And I it's funny because my wife is a big fan of Jensen Ackles because of Supernatural. I'm a big fan of Jensen Ackles because of The Boys, the Amazon Prime series. He's in the third season. He plays one of the characters. And yes, I do think he's dashingly handsome. But I did enjoy seeing him in this film there. Again, would I say it's his breakout performance there? No. Definitely not, but he does perfectly fine. Just like a dude who, again, is kind of shrouded in mystery on why exactly he left, but he's coming back into town, and then whenever he starts to get a sparked interest in a previous relationship he had whenever he was there a decade ago, kind of makes things really interesting, so he does a really good job with that. But yeah, I really liked his performance there. I felt like he definitely had a little bit more ground to stand on than the original actor who played Tom in the original one. I also like how he's kind of more of a focal point, because again, whenever he arrives in town, a lot of the miners in the community are like, no, you can't sell the mine. This is our livelihood. This is like the base thing. He's like, I want nothing to do with that mine. I have nothing but bad memories there. I just want to get rid of it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great plot device, because there's already like a lot of animosity in the town and a lot of superstition in the town that's centered on him, but he has a good reason for being back, so it really sets up that mystery of like, oh, he comes in town and then people start dying. Oh, could it be? Or, and then they set up several characters along the way where it's like, oh, these people all have motivations for picking up a pickaxe and killing some people. So
yeah, they definitely do a good job of kind of like keeping it shrouded in mystery as to who exactly is Harry Warden. Is it actually Harry Warden, or is it somebody else in town?
Right.
And then as the story progresses, like more hints, clues, possible red herrings, question mark, are thrown out just to kind of keep us guessing to the end. And while I think the mystery of it overall is less effective the second time through, it was still pretty sound. Like a lot of issues that I thought I was going to have of like, wait, what about this? They resolved them like, oh, right, it happens in this scene. Like they just kind of make it a much neater mystery than what I've seen previous, where sometimes it's like, yeah, I could have not guessed that in a billion years.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, overall though, while he's definitely not like Oscar-worthy, groundbreaking performance, I still think Jensen Ackles did a pretty daggum good job.
Yeah.
And then moving down the line, we have Jamie King playing Sarah Palmer, who is the previous girlfriend of Tom whenever he was in town, but is now married. And overall, I thought her character was perfectly fine. Again, nothing like too noteworthy or groundbreaking, but again, I feel like they thought more about these characters and how their relationship is to the world, as opposed to the first one, where it's kind of like, again, usual 80s slasher level of developmental relationships there.
Yeah, no, they definitely worked to like kind of set up a love triangle with her, but that's pretty much her only role, is she's kind of caught in the middle of this love triangle of Jason Ackles' character coming back, Tom, and then the sheriff guy.
Yeah, Axel Palmer.
Yeah, Axel. Yeah, how could I forget Axel? Axel Palmer, who's coincidentally, all three of these people survived the first attack, so they all had that existing traumatic background or whatever, and they're all tied together. But yeah, Tom and Sarah split, and then Axel and Sarah got together and got married and have kids, and now Tom's back in town, so it's like a point of contention between them. But, and in that 10 years, Axel went from not being on the squad at all to being the sheriff of town. So it must really be a small town. They had an opening, I guess.
Yes, for sure. Definitely pretty small town. Not really known for its good not killings.
Yeah.
There.
Well, yeah, though they say in the beginning of the movie that it's like the #1 murder rate in the United States or something. They're like, this little mining town has the highest murder rate, which is wild. But it's probably also why he became the sheriff in 10 years. The other guy that retired was probably just like, fuck this. And nobody else wanted the job. That's a lot of burden to put on one person's career. Is all right, well, if we can just not be the #1 most murdered town, that would be epic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, overall, I think she does a perfectly fine job. It's not like she's ever annoying, and I believe like her reasoning and actions for a lot of the stuff there, because she is kind of caught between both Tom and Axel, because even though she is married to Axel definitely has a lot of flaws. Yeah. And I think Kerr Smith, who plays Axel, does a fairly decent job of, kind of being a dick, but also just trying to do what's right as a sheriff there. Definitely has major flaws, which would easily put a wedge between him and Sarah's relationship there, which makes the story natural as to why she would just linger between him and Tom, So I think it's hard for Kerr Smith with his character there, because he is like fairly unlikable, but he also has to be kind of the grounded one, so that way you're not completely all in on like Tom. There, it's definitely just this kind of back and forth stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought his performance was fine.
Yeah.
Nothing groundbreaking, but perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I thought he executed his character well. It's a tough character to execute, because you're not like supposed to love him, but at the same time, he is like the sheriff trying to solve the murder mystery or whatever. So you gotta kind of like root for him a little bit. And,
Yeah, so I think it's perfectly fine there. One of the friends that's at the beginning of the film, Irene, played by Betsy Rue, was dating Axel whenever Sarah was dating Tom there, and I feel like overall she's perfectly fine, just kind of the bubbly girlfriend, kind of, the party girl.
Yeah.
And
the like 5-minute full frontal nudity scene girl.
Oh yeah. Her career definitely diverted in a different direction, where
you skip forward a decade.
Yeah, it's like, Axel becomes the sheriff and Irene kind of goes her own way, just meeting up with other dudes, chatting up,
How do you think, like, because I know you negotiate shit for being naked in contracts. I hope she got, like, a lot of money for the amount of screen time she's just, like, butt fucking naked in this movie.
So that's, like, major kudos to Betsy for being a real trooper, because, like, even in, like, a lot of, like, other slasher films, like, you get, like, maybe a couple of seconds of full frontal nudity or something like that. No, she is just...
She's out there.
Naked as a jaybird, as my folks say.
Yeah, there's so many. There was several scenes that must have taken multiple days of filming, maybe, of just being butt naked. I feel like I could be naked in a film, but like, in the standard amount of time. Like, there was a butt in this film. I could be that dude that has his butt out. I don't know that I'd want my dick and balls out for 5 minutes in a movie, but that's more power to her, because she's just more comfortable in her skin than I would be in mine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And shout outs to Todd Farmer playing Frank the trucker, showing his booty.
Yeah. I'm glad they at least represented some male ass in this movie.
Oh yeah,
I don't think this movie passes the Bechdel test, so I'm not calling it like a feminist masterpiece, but at least there's some male ass. So.
Yeah. So good for asses, and good for Betsy for being real trooper and just doing a really, really hard scene, just pretty much having zero shame and just working at like
a gun, and it just heals and nothing else. And
that's even more difficult because she has to run.
Yeah.
So major kudos to Betsy there. So just got to give a little shout out there. Not too many other characters to focus on too much. There's like the police force there, like currently Deputy Martin, played by Eddie Gathegi. Again, his character's given nothing. He's just kind of the deputy of the town there, just kind of has to fill the job, which again, he does the role just fine. It's just writing script wise, there was little to nothing.
Yeah, he's kind of in scenes, and they kind of throw out a comment or two about him, but he's mostly just like there to make the script get moving every now and then.
And then moving on, we have Burke, who was the previous town sheriff there, who had some of the driest delivered lines at the beginning of the film, which fortunately I'm glad it kind of got better as the film went on, or we got used to it, but overall, I think he's fine, just being like the old retired sheriff there.
Yeah.
Again, nothing too much there. And then we have Ben Foley, who tries to talk Tom about not selling the mine there, because he's like, yeah, this is our livelihood. You're going to be screwing over the town there. He does a fine job, has a couple of goofy moments, popping up in blazers at entry doors. As you mentioned.
He's like, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? Well, come and have a drink. I just so happen to be in a full suit right now to sip whiskey with you.
Yeah, but, I mean, overall, does a fine job. And then, lastly, the one I'll mention is Megan, who's the little cashier that works at the grocery store that Sarah manages or owns or whatever, but also has her own dirty little secret, considering that her and Axel are currently an item.
They're boinking.
Yes. So that also provides a little another wedge, and I normally wouldn't spoil this, but it's like right at the beginning of the film there. So it just sets up all of the tension all the way and around the board. So I feel like overall, I mean, there are other characters, but they're so minute and they're just kind of fulfilling their purpose. But it was fine, whenever it comes to that. So yeah, overall, nothing that would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best performance I've ever seen. But again, the main actors that need to perform well do well enough, in my opinion. Yeah. And lastly, let's talk about Harry Warden.
Yeah, good old Harry.
Yeah, so with Harry, in this film, they definitely kind of gave him a lot of energy more so this time round. Like, he is pretty much having that, Jason Voorhees level of energy, which Richard John Walters portrayed Harry Warden, but whenever we refer to Harry Warden, we're talking about, like, minor gear Harry Warden.
Yeah, you don't really get to see his face because he's like gas masked up with a lantern on and killing people, which adds fuel to the mystery of like, all right, is Harry Warden back from the dead, quote unquote, or is it somebody else in town that's killing, or is it a mixture? Who knows?
But I definitely love the hustle Harry has in his film. Like, he pretty much delivers the goods whenever it comes to a slasher pick there. And like, I remember one of the things we complained about in the first film is the lack of combat whenever it came to the pickaxe.
Yeah.
They definitely made sure to choreograph some really slick pickaxe skills.
There was some like fucking Star Wars Episode 3 lightsaber battles going on when somebody grabs like a shovel and they're like fighting each other, like sword fighting, like ding 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 in the middle of the mines. I mean, that happens. They did some choreography, and then there's also some times where it's just like do pickaxe skull.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, but I think that's like one of the things I can appreciate about it is that it still felt fresh a bit. It didn't feel like it was the exact same kind of kill we're seeing over and over again.
There's definitely a balance to it, but
but yeah, and some of the kills are just insane there, especially towards the beginning. Like, I feel like they used a lot of their like over the top kills towards the beginning, and then towards the middle, there's like not too much because they focus more on the plot and the mystery there. And then towards the end, there's definitely some sweet action happening.
I was surprised at how quickly they kind of got into the action because I obviously you don't know the plot going in, that there's just like a dabble of 10 years ago and then you skip forward to the main thing. So it was like, like the first couple minutes of filming, I was like, all right, they're setting stuff up, and then just like, death, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, no, they definitely hit the ground running on this film, guys, compared to the first one, where you don't really hear too much, except like whenever they rescued, Harry Warden, he supposedly like killed people, but you never really saw him do anything. It's not until like they decide to celebrate Valentine's Day that, he comes back and is basically going on his killing spree. So I think that's just another thing that I'm like, that's awesome that they just decided, you know what if we did this instead and just had a whole bunch of crazy stuff, because basically at the beginning of the film, there's like a whole bunch of like some of the miners and like other teenagers there celebrating, and just partying there, so it just makes it ripe for a slasher pick, and boy howdy, it is. It's a good setup there. Like, the dominoes are perfectly set up there, and so I could definitely appreciate that the filmmakers are like, yeah, let's just go this direction here and do our own thing, but just be inspired by the source material. So yeah, it was really good. One thing I will mention is it's so weird to think about this, but the one thing I really love about this film is the cinematography. I feel like the cinematography, whenever it comes to the way the film is shot, is very well done. Like, this is like one of those things that I'm like, I like the way they filmed it. I like the lighting. I like the style of shooting there. Like, if they would use like a certain lens for a certain shot or something. I was very much a fan of it, which usually, especially with like slasher picks, I don't really focus on too much with cinematography, but that was something I noticed, and I'm like, holy cow, I like this. So major kudos to Brian Pearson for hitting it out of the park, in my personal opinion anyways, and the cinematography.
It's interesting you say that, because I guess I was just distracted by all the Spy Kids 3D moments. Or they'd be doing like a normal shot, and then you could just tell that they're like,
yeah, there's definitely a lot of moments, even though we watched it in 2D, that like, okay, if this was in 3D, like, this would be clearly there. And, I would say the effects, like, overall, whenever it came to like the I mean, obviously not 3D motion effects, but like actual computer 3D effects. It definitely shows its age there, but it still held up fairly fine. I felt like it did its job.
Oh yeah, it's not like, I mean, it's cheesy. It's definitely cheesy, but it's not like awful,
No, and so it just makes me want to get that 3D TV more. But yeah, I can understand why you'd be a little distracted by that. But I guess like I just mentioned it because there's like small moments there, like especially towards the beginning, like whenever Harry is doing his thing and you see like the light all the way from his helmet going spreading across the floor there, like you see the cone of light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like small stuff like that I really appreciate. And whenever they do set up for kills, I feel like they're shot very well, so you see exactly what's happening and how it happens.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think they do a good job with the camera of explaining the scene without having to, rely on exposition or some or multiple rapid shots or something. They do a good job of showing, all right, this is where they're hiding and this is where the killer is, or this is, they do map it out pretty well. So I'd agree. That's hard to translate into film always. So
yeah,
that's kudos to them.
Yeah, and I feel like because they do it so well, I mean, it just, I don't know, it makes like Harry Warden even more so like one of my favorite slashers there, just because again of that raw visceral energy they give him and just the way they're able to show him like doing his stuff, cleaning up the place. So I really like that a ton. Was there anything else you wanted to mention there before getting into spoilers?
Oh sheesh. Man, I don't think so. It definitely was bloody. I'll say before we get, because I can say that without spoiling. If you're, if you watched the original My Bloody Valentine and you're like, wow, well, this isn't too bad. I'll pop this on with my kids or something. The remake. Oh no! Don't do that. Like if you're just worried maybe about the content might be too much or something, like it just. Like, pop on the first 3 minutes, and then you will understand.
Yes. The first 3 minutes of this film sets the tone exactly. Like, it pretty much is just going to be at that exact same level, because it is pretty gosh darn bloody, as you mentioned. There is a lot of hacked up corpses there, especially. It's not just like a little splash of blood. No, it's like carcasses.
And a lot of times with like special effects and stuff, especially in that era where things weren't, as polished as they are now, and especially on lower budget movies, they tend to like not focus on the gore or something. But there's a scene in the beginning where it's just like you see like literally cut in half, mangled bodies just like chilling there on screen while they're talking and having like exposition of the story, and there's just like all these bodies around them, and it's like holy shit.
Yeah. It's like actual practical effects, nothing like computer generated or anything like that. Just genuine, practical effects showing all its bloody glory there.
Oh yeah.
So it definitely, for like all the bloodhounds out there, it definitely matches what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think I can summarize a lot of the theme of this movie pretty quickly, which is everything's gratuitous. It's all gratuitous. The violence is gratuitous. The blood is gratuitous. But then also, and the cheese is gratuitous. But the delivery and the action, everything is really hammed up to 11. Which, is a benefit for some, but if you're looking for I want to watch a horror movie with a good story that's really going to creep me out or something, like this isn't it. If you're looking for I want something fun and like silly and lots of blood and gore and I can watch with my friends or whatever, that's what this movie is.
Yeah, okay. I think that was a really good point to bring up. Is just like how over the top this film can be and is cranked up to 11 there. But I do have one burning question I do have to ask.
Sure.
Do you prefer this one or the original?
Oh, easy, this one. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Whenever we get to our rankings or whatever, you might be surprised by what I rank it based on this comment, but I feel like my just enjoyability alone, this is a much more enjoyable movie. The pacing is so much better, and the kills are so much more creative, and the story has a lot more going for it. It's a good movie for those reasons. But it's also like, I'm trying to think of a movie. I don't know. I've never actually seen Sharknado, but I imagine Sharknado is kind of like you can watch the whole movie and the whole thing's entertaining, but it's not like it's not like a great movie. Or, it's just because there's sharks and tornadoes. You're watching this because there's a cool killer and he's cutting people up, and and it's got the hot guy from Supernatural, but it's like it's not a masterpiece of cinema or anything, but it's a good fun time, and I feel like the original My Bloody Valentine was just a little slow, at times, and some of the stuff that was unbelievable didn't feel like it was unbelievable and in like a funny, campy way. It was just like that was just a bad decision on the filmmaker's part there. But this one is like, okay, yeah, like I don't believe half the shit that's happening right now, but it doesn't matter because I just saw a guy dual wield a pickaxe and throw one through a car windshield, and it's like that's the kind of movie we're watching. So.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you've kind of explained your overall thoughts with the film there. Yeah. So how about you give that a sweet spanking number?
Okay. I don't remember exactly what I rated the last one. I remember it was pretty bad.
It was like a 4, I want to say.
It was like a 3 or a 4. It was one of the lowest. This movie, again, my ranking scale is not necessarily on an enjoyment scale, but on like what I think the elements of a good movie are, and enjoyment's part of that. Don't get me wrong. This is like a 5. I would say I enjoyed it much more than that score would reflect. It's a good time, and if I'm just like based on like, okay, is this movie entertaining flat out for whatever reason, then yeah, I might give it like a 7 or 8 because it's a good time. But I also think The Room is really entertaining, but I couldn't give that movie a 7 or 8. That would be blasphemous. It's an awful movie. I would give that movie like a 1, but that's why you watch it, is because it's entertaining for that reason. So yeah, this is like a 5. It's a much better film whenever you look at just the script, the performances, all the special effects, all those sorts of things are elevated. But at the same time, none of the female characters mean anything. There's really just 2 characters that are any good at all, and that's the sheriff and Tom and Axel. The killer's really cool, but at the same time, there's only so much you could do with a pickaxe. I think they do a great job of exploring that category, but they're like, I don't know. There's a lot of people die in this movie. I won't spoil the number. A lot die, and they all have to die from a pickaxe. And and it's at a certain point, it's like, yeah, I've seen a lot of eyeballs on the ends of pickaxes now. Like, there's only so much you could do with that. Yeah. So for those reasons, I don't remember anything about the score. I think the sound effects were kind of like cheesy, generic, and yeah. But I do give them a lot of props for. It's a much better improvement, even factoring in just age of the film, because I feel like it's hard to make like just an awful movie once you hit the 2000s, as far as like movies that are actually released in theaters. But yeah, this is certainly not bad. Remember, 5's average. So from like a cinematic perspective, yeah, they do a good job with an interesting plot. I just think the characters fall short, and none of the other things are beefed up that much. It just has a cool villain, a decent enough plot to get you through it, and a lot of great action. So.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think that's totally fair there, and I'm glad that overall it was still just like a good fun time, even though like as a film you're just like, it's average.
It's a lot of camp. I don't give any points for camp, but like if I was given points for camp, this is great. This is great and campy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's totally fair. I will definitely cover the campy side there, but it's so funny because with this film, watching it, this is my second time seeing it. I was watching it at the beginning, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's a little slow and like silly there, especially with how stilted the line deliveries were from the then sheriff before there's like the 10-year skip. But as the film just went on, again, I just got swept away by like the goofiness of it there, the pure adrenaline and violence there, and maybe I just have a thing for like mask silent killers there. I think it's a vibe, it works there, but I love Harry Warden in this film. I do like seeing Jensen Ackles, even though again this isn't his role that I'm like, oh, you love Jensen Ackles here? Well, this is his creme de la crop of a film here. But it's a really good time. Like, it's just something that I could easily see myself watching, especially during Valentine's Day, because it's not super Valentine-y, that as I would say, as opposed to the first film. Like, heck, even the town's called Valentine's Bluff, whereas this film, I believe it's called like Harmony, something like that.
Yeah,
it's definitely not called Valentine's Bluff. But overall, it's just still like a fun time to kick back, relax. The slower moments definitely were a lot slower this time around, where I'm like, okay, I know what happens, and then some of the decisions, yeah, it's kind of dumb, but overall, I feel like for the mystery they tried to unravel, it's fairly solid. You know, I like what they did there, and I'll be curious to see what you thought of the mystery and if you were able to put the pieces together before the resolution came about. But overall, like, I feel like since I rated the first one an 8, like, I would rate probably this one an 8 also, just for different reasons. I feel like, you know, I do love that in the first film they are in the mine quite a lot there. I love the ambience of the mine and everything else. But I feel like the character chemistry wasn't too great in that one. But I feel like the character like dynamics they set up in this one's a lot more interesting, even though it's really just between, let's just face it, the two of them, maybe 3 if you include Sarah, but again, they don't give her a lot. But I really like the idea that they went with, and again, I think I just give it a lot of major kudos, especially for being like a remake that I'm like, okay, this is how remakes should be there. It shouldn't be afraid of confinements there. It should just be free to explore whatever, because I'm just tired of seeing like remakes that are just exactly what I've seen in the first one, whenever the first one wasn't broken at all, or sometimes going even worse.
Yeah.
So I give a lot of props to them basically taking a film that wasn't, you know, like bona fide classic per se, but reintroducing it to the audience. And not only that, making it in 3D especially. They just looked and are like, yeah, this would be a fun film in 3D, and just amping that up. Because even in 2D, like Aaron mentioned, he was still having fun just like looking at it, and how, again, they were truly trying to make this look 3D there, even in 2D. So I give it a lot of props there, and in all honesty, it's like I waver between the two on which one I like better. I think it just kind of depends on the move. If I'm for something like especially violent, over the top, or if I'm into something more ambient, moody, you know, relax, I think I just flip-flop between the two. I honestly couldn't probably choose a favorite. They're pretty even keel for me, which is weird. I think it just kind of depends on the vibe that I'm feeling there. Like, if I was to answer now, maybe the remake. If I had to choose it, just because Harry Warden is just super molto bene in this film. So yeah, I still definitely give it my highest recommendations, especially if you haven't seen the original. I think it's fine to watch this one without watching the original, or if you've seen the original, definitely should watch it. Highly recommend. But it's just a good time all around. Yeah, it definitely gives my good old thumbs up, and Aaron gives the sideway thumbs. You know, like right there in the middle.
It's good for what it is.
Yes.
But yeah, if you're not looking for that kind of movie, I'd be like, skip it. But that's just me.
Yeah, no, perfectly understandable. And so, with that being said, let's jump to spoilers here, Bubby. So, how about we talk about the first spoiler that you want to talk about?
Man, the first thing that comes to mind is just the ending, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not that we need to start at the end, but that's just like, that's the big thing. It's a kind of a mystery movie. Let's talk about the mystery, which was, it was in Tom's head the whole time. Which I thought was kind of fucking, yeah, I thought it was stupid, but I get it at the same time. It was cheesy, but like, I get it. He was actually just having a psychotic episode, and he was the one putting on the mask and killing people. Which was fine. By the time that was revealed in the movie, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's him. But just before, you know, Sarah got the phone call that was like, he was in a mental ward for 7 years or whatever. Right before that happened, I thought it was going to be some Scooby-Doo ass shit. Because he's like, comes back in town to sell the mine, and I thought he was like, oh, I'm going to, instead of having to pay severance packages, I'm just going to kill all my workers and make them all quit or something. And that way I can sell the mine and get a better profit. I thought it was going to be some Scooby-Doo shit.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely glad it didn't go that way. That would have been so dumb.
definitely much better. And my Scooby-Doo theory faded as they really developed the love triangle thing. But yeah, I guess that's my first interesting spoiler is just how it ends there. I do kind of like, even though it was cheesy, I do kind of like that it ends the same way that it ended 10 years ago, where Harry kind of gets away.
Mm-hmm.
And after they shoot and miss a lot because they're a bad shot. Sarah, I understand being a bad shot, but those two cops should have killed him the first time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, and then he kind of gets away. There's like an explosion, and then he kills the guy that's rescuing him and sneaks out, and so it sets up for a sequel when they discover how to make movies in the fourth dimension.
Yeah. Yes, I can't wait for My Bloody Valentine 240.
Yeah. 240.
Yes, definitely make that happen. Bring Jensen Ackles back, baby.
How did you feel about the ending? Like, did you see it coming the first time?
I did not. I sincerely did not, because again, like, there's a lot of like stuff they do as kind of like red herrings there. Like, one of the biggest ones is whenever he goes to visit the mine to try to like talk to them about like, he's not going to sell the mine once his like love for Sarah kind of reignites. And, he goes down, and basically Harry Warden pushes him. I don't know why I did air quotes. You can't even see that.
Right.
Pushes him into the cage that he originally was whenever he failed to keep the miners safe originally. And then you see Harry Warden lock that in.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh, well, how could it possibly be him if he's currently locked in? And it's one of those things that's like, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I don't know, is this fact right here going to bother me? Because I knew at that moment he was the killer the second time round, but watching it, I was like just trying to remember. I'm like, well, how in the world did he lock it so good against it? But they take the time and actually show like him shoving the head of the pickaxe there to jam it, which it's not as neat as it was like in the imagination that was all in his head there. But I like that idea. I felt like they explored this idea a lot better than they did in the first one, because the first one I felt like was fairly, I think I even mentioned this on the podcast, completely out of left field. And not only that, but it switched. It's not the person coming back into town that's the killer, in the original. It's Axel, who's been there the entire time because his dad was killed by Harry Warden.
Right.
But in this film, they switch it. So again, I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's probably Axel, because Axel was the original guy who did it. But they switched it. And I like that.
Switcheroo.
That, I mean, again, it might be a hot take. I like that they switched it and changed it up, and they weren't afraid to do that. But not only that, but just have it be from somebody, because I think I would have been more miffed if it's just like, Jensen Ackles was like, yes, I've been evil the whole time. Because that's kind of like the way they make it seem in the first film. Like, Axel just snaps. He's like, yes, I'm going to kill everybody there. Whereas this one, like, he was, Tom is traumatized by Harry Warden attacking him. And again, feels major grief about what happened to the miners and everything. Which is why he left. And so he's having these visions of Harry pop up. So I really like that aspect. I really liked it a ton. And again, it's just kind of like made him a lot more sympathetic, because I think otherwise, because I was watching it the second time round to see, is there any bit of him that's antagonistic? And it's like, not too much, unless it's like against Axel. But again, he's kind of just, mad that Axel, just ended up marrying Sarah, like his previous girlfriend. But also, to like Axel's credit, Tom just left, and so basically, as Sarah explains, like, oh, well, Axel was there for me. But I really like that aspect, and I like how they took the time of just kind of showing these breaks going in and out, because I knew he had something going on whenever he was popping pills the first time round. Like, I knew something was happening, and that's a pretty big stinking clue.
Right, the first time it happened, I was like, oh, let's see where this goes. Like, because the first time he does it at the motel, I was like, oh, weird pill popping thing. They're probably going to explore some sort of anxiety that he had from the initial incident or whatever. And then they didn't, and I didn't really catch on that it was him, because, obviously they show him get trapped in the cage. So I was like, it can't be Tom. Until that second time he pops pills, and I was like, oh yeah, every time he pops pills when he's nearby a murder scene, people get murdered, so it's got to be him, and it's probably some psychosis thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely interesting, and they don't really try to explain what exactly he's diagnosed with. It's just basically inferred that he goes through these episodes where he thinks he's Harry Warden because he's constantly haunted by him there, and so then like there's just moments where he feels kind of his mind shifts into becoming Harry Warden there, which
yeah, and I do like, I said it was kind of like a dumb ending or a cheesy one. I do think it's cheesy. I don't think it's dumb because I do think they do a good job of setting it up, and it's kind of, I can see how you watch it from the second time and be like, oh yeah, I mean literally in that first scene from 10 years ago or whatever, he's sitting there looking traumatized with Harry's blood on his face.
Yeah,
about to die and then got shot. And he's just, I was too busy. I didn't soak that in because I was too busy thinking it looked like awful blood spatter.
Yeah.
It looked like he just had bad acting.
Yeah, just like comedic splatter there. Just
well, because whenever blood spatters at high volume, it doesn't. It was like dotted on his face very obviously, and not like misted or whatever. Because he was like point blank getting this blood shot on his face, and it wasn't. You couldn't see where the direction the blood was heading. It was just like dotted on his face, which was funny. Most of the practical effects are very good in this movie, considering. It was just that one that I was like, man, they let the intern do the makeup for this scene. But...
yeah, it's definitely pretty silly, but I do love how also they do set up that level of antagonism from Harry and Tom, because again, Harry has this thing, it's like, hey, bleed the line, don't screw this up, man. He's like, hey, let me do my job, man.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, whatever, because Harry is already like a jerkwad
he's
to
like
him.
A loose cannon.
Yeah, and so that's what just kind of triggers him, which I also like how they showed that he is kind of like basically an asshole to Tom, which again, whenever he does have a mental snap, he's like, okay, I'm gonna start killing everybody there, like you believe a little bit more as opposed to if he was a normal Joe. But not only that, but whenever Harry's going on that killing spree at the party and is killing all of those teenagers there, again, he has that moment where he's just staring at Tom, and Tom is like just going through this head like, oh my god, right, he's gonna kill me, and then the cops managed to save him in time. I really liked that a ton, and I felt like it got to, there's a lot of unique stuff they did, like again, like this is definitely not like groundbreaking performance of like, oh man, I felt like Jensen Ackles was two different people. Definitely not even in the upper echelon. I feel like he does fine. Like you could tell whenever his like tonal shifts towards the end, whenever he's kind of in Harry Warden mode. One of my favorite things, and I know we're talking about the ending a lot, I swear we'll talk about the middle stuff. There's just a lot packed into this ending here. One of my favorite things is like whenever he initially runs away, like whenever Sarah tries to shoot him, and he comes back and he's doing like the original thing in the film whenever he's like popping out the light bulbs with the pickaxe. But they make the purposeful edited effect where every time it pops, there's like a flash of him dressed up in the miner suit.
I did
as
think
Harry
that was
Warden.
cool.
And like they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do it at all. But the fact that they did, I'm just like, that's really cool. It just really sets the tone and everything.
I think they did it right too, because you could have really ham-fisted that, and that's kind of what I would have expected from a movie like this, where it's like, flash, and then it's just like like 3 pictures of Harry Warden or something, so the audience really gets that, oh, he's having a psychotic break. But it's really subtle. It's just like right when the flash hits, you see like a frame of Harry Warden or whatever as he walks down. I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of nice. Kind of nice with it.
Yeah, so I was a really big fan of that. I do also love that, again, I keep bringing this up, they make him sympathetic. Like, I would have been more annoyed if, like, and that's my biggest thing with the first one is, again, just Axel being antagonistic, as I said. But he has, like, a moment where he's freaking out. He's like, oh my god, Harry Ward is behind you. Please, please believe me. And, Axel's like, okay, he's clearly crazy. There's nobody there. And then Sarah doesn't know what's going on. But they have like a moment where he's just having a mental break, and Harry Warden approaches him until he like dissipates there, and so I just feel like that's very well done, and especially whenever it comes to the moment whenever Sarah has to shoot Tom. There's like that moment whenever she's about to shoot, and like for a brief moment you see Tom's humanity kind of come back before it shifts back to Harry Warden. Then it has the most cheesiest explosion there. But I mean, to be fair, I think an explosion needed to happen.
Yeah,
most definitely needed to happen. But yeah, and so with that being resolved and everything, I do also like how, you know, it has to be Sarah doing it, because I think if it was Tom, it'd be super quick. Not to mention, Tom and Axel had a sweet freaking fight with a pickaxe shovel there.
Yeah, that's what I was referencing. That was like Duel of the Fates.
Because like the original one sucked. Like I love the first one, but it sucked. It was just like ding ding, you know, just like, you know, hey, we have like a minute to choreograph this. Yeah. What do we do with a pickaxe and a shovel? No, they just they go all out whenever it comes to potential stuff. Heck, they even explored like a little bit earlier whenever the girl haphazardly tries to slap Harry Warden upside the head with a shovel. And I'm sure we'll talk about all the magnificent kills that happened throughout the film. But yeah, so I really like that a ton. I also like how he escapes, because in the original one, even though, again, I like it just fine, it would always kind of miffed me whenever it's like Axel cuts his arm off and then is laughing away in the mines there. Yeah. It's pretty goofy. As opposed to this one, it just makes logical sense. You know, they're sending in a team to help rescue people. They don't know what's happening.
Right, they just know there's an explosion in the mines.
Yeah, and so it's like coming in and they see, you know, Tom, looks normal. They don't really suspect him of anything. And then, you know, he goes in with the pickaxe, steals the outfit there, and is able to sneak out of the mines. I wish they would have had him remove the mask a little further away from everybody.
Yeah, it was definitely like a cheesy for the camera reveal.
But, I mean, overall, it's like a minor nitpick.
Yeah.
Minor
nitpick. Nitpick. Oh, wow. There's layers.
But... another thing that I do like about the ending is how they initially set up the, like, you know, oh, don't shoot me, it's him. And it's like, oh, what are you talking about? It's him. Because they have a lot of build up and a lot of reveals. You know, I mean, and there's like a few sprinkled in, but towards that last third, they amp it up.
Oh, yeah. And I love that Axel just gives up at one point.
And
he's like, just kill both of us.
Yeah, I really like it because he just plays it realistically. Because I'm sure in Axel's head, he probably feels really guilty about the fact that he was cheating on Sarah and it's gone to this point. And he's like, I know it's him. And if she at least kills both of us, then I'll like rest safe. And then again, it just makes sense also from her perspective, to where she's still uncertain, because like maybe the killer's like, yeah, you know, kill both of us, you know, I don't care as long as he dies.
Right.
And so whenever Tom's like, no, don't do that, Axel, you're crazy, you need to stop there. And it isn't until there's that that contradiction there that he spouts whenever he's like, look, he's the one that killed Megan earlier, because like in the letter it says, you know, I love you forever. And that's what Harry wrote at the top. And so then, you know, Sarah's like, well, how'd you know that? And he's like, you told me. And she's like, no. And so then that's what makes me curious, is like, to what level this like psychotic condition is, to where is he actually cognitive and was trying to pin it on Axel there? Or was it just merely coincidental there? Like, you just don't know where the mentality lies of how much Tom knows whenever he shifts to like Harry's, you know, mindset there, if he remembers everything. Just makes me very curious.
Yeah. I thought that whole part was as soon as I saw the message above or whatever, I knew Axel wouldn't be the killer unless he was really playing some 4D chess or something, because like, why would you write that note to yourself? It seemed obvious that it was like a threat to him. So then I was like, okay, it's either actually Harry, which doesn't seem likely, or yeah, it's Tom. But that was an interesting one. I also thought that scene was extra interesting because that's where you find out that Sarah's just known that she's been getting cheated on this whole time, and she's just like, I have eyes. Like, and I was like, oh, you're not like how do you work with this person every day if you know that she's cheating on you?
I just never believed that they actually really loved each other. I think that's one thing there. I feel like it's just kind of like a very troubled marriage, and then by the end they're just like, oh, I love you. And it's like, I love you too. I guess somehow Tom fixed their marriage or something. I don't know. That whole thing was a little crazy. And so that's the other thing too. They like make Axel such like an asshole that it's hard to kind of be on his side a little bit there. But again, they do try to keep him fairly grounded there. Because whenever it's like revealed that he's like cheating on her at the beginning of the film with like one of her co-workers there, it's like that's pretty messed up, dude.
Megan's just crazy too. Holy shit. She's just nonchalantly like, first off, she's like, here's a Valentine that I'm giving you, even though I know, like, I work with your wife, I know you're married, and, like, you couldn't do anything with this card. Like, I made the joke, like, yeah, I'll go put it on my mantle. Like, geez, it's like a really weirdly romantic affair, I guess. And then, and then she's like, also, I'm pregnant with your child, and just kind of like drops that and then walks off and expects him to be happy, and then he's like looking away menacingly. I'm like, she's gonna die, absolutely. Like, there's no question. If either Axel kills her or she's killed, and it's like, oh, there's a motivation there because he didn't want her to have a kid.
Yeah, and so that's like the thing. Like, they throw a lot of like clues and red herrings all throughout this film. I mean, it's like a palooza fest, like throwing it everywhere, which I think
at one point Tom even like makes the deputy, like, he's like, oh, why were you at the mine, huh? Like, and it's the deputy that has like 4 lines, and he's like, it's just doing my job. And it's like, are we supposed to think it might be this deputy? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely glad it wasn't the deputy died.
That would be really funny.
Yeah, just for no reason.
Out of left field. I was tired of seeing you. I was tired of seeing Axel with Sarah. She deserves someone better.
You're getting too real with me, Aaron.
Yeah. So he just starts killing everybody.
Yeah, speaking of kills, I feel like for the most part we've talked a lot about the ending. How about we go talk about all of the magnificent, wonderful kills that happens all throughout this film?
Yeah, there's some shit. Man, in the beginning there's that woman with the shovel, and she gets that shovel shoveled in her mouth and then bonked into place with the pickaxe.
Yeah,
to just dislocate her jaw.
Yeah, like I would say this is some of the best slasher scenes I've seen, with just how creative it gets. Because again, it's like whenever you see the shovel, again, she's trying to whack Harry with it. Harry grabs the shovel and just shoves it like in her mouth against a post, and already she's like bleeding, and it's just kind of like doing that. But then he takes the pickaxe and just hammers it in more. Mm-hmm. So that way, you see that the top of the head is staying exactly where it is. Everything else slowly slumps down in a bloody mess.
That's when I was like, Jesus Christ, he's Jason Bourne.
Yes. And so then, obviously lots of kills there, like picks through the back of the head, making the eyeball pop out on the tip of the pick.
The first one. Well, not the first one besides all the hosptal, but you don't really see those. You just see bloody bodies.
That's pretty much off camera there, which I'm perfectly fine with.
Yeah.
There, we get to, but yeah, Harry went to work, like killing all those people. I think he killed 22 people, they said.
Oh, wow.
There, just, he was on a killing spree for sure. He was pretty angry. Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, he pretty much was, working real hard there.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting all those kills. And again, you get that like goofy action sequence where he throws the pick and it's like swiveling towards the car windshield, and it just stops barely before it hits him right in the face.
Yeah, and they have like 3 camera angles to show that it's like, half an inch away from her nose.
Yeah.
And I love when it crashes through, and it's obviously supposed to be like the first big 3D effect in the movie. Besides the eyeball pickaxe, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to just really jump out at audiences. The producers or whoever's writing this is just thinking like, yeah, and then their popcorn's going to jostle in their lap, like, whoa. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And then it's, for the most part, lays down a little bit, but then picks up right immediately as soon as they get to that, like, little motel strip that Tom's staying at.
Yeah, that's a scene.
Oh, that whole thing. I mean, again, we talked about this previously, but whenever Betsy Rue's character, Irene, she's also at the motel, which Tom happens to see because they are moaning and super loud during their sex there, that, you know, Tom's looking in, is like, what's going on? Okay, moving on. And so basically, you know, Irene's having a time of her life there, and then she decides to confront the trucker once she realizes that, hey, you were recording that, you know, I need you to delete that. And he's like, nah, I think I'm going to break this off. This is just going to be part of my collection there. You know, I got a wife there, because you even see him slip on the wedding ring there. And again, she's not having any of it there. Like, she'll put her heels on, nothing else, grabs her gun, and is basically confronting him outside of the motel strip, which, again, I just think it's funny that they conscientiously chose to do that, as opposed to even, like, getting, like, a towel wrapped around, or a kimono, something like that.
Just something that would suggest, you know, still be sexual. But no, she just walks out, just straight up. She had time. I don't think she was wearing her heels in the beginning of that scene. She had time to put on her strap on her heels, but not
anything else.
Toss a shirt on or something.
Yeah, for sure. I'm surprised they just didn't have her be barefoot, but I guess in that gravel parking lot would have been pretty hard. But then again, walking in heels also pretty gosh darn hard in a gravel parking lot.
True.
But yeah, and so then you get, like, Harry Warden, aka Tom, popping out of the front of the truck there and just slamming down. And then he starts to pursue, chasing Irene into the room, and she slips into, like, the owner's room, which I gotta say, I love the owner of the motel. Again, that they casted her. I wish I knew exactly what she had, like, maybe like dwarfism, something.
She was a little person for sure.
Yeah, like a little person there, but I love that they did that. And they didn't make a big deal out of it, except for the fact her demise.
Holy, like, slammed into the
ceiling. It's so...
It was brutal.
Yeah, it's so goofy that they just did that. Because again, like, whenever she's looking for her French dog Lewis there, and so, you know, she's thinking, like... I also love the way that scene is set up, by the way, with Irene slipping underneath the bed, Harry Warden walking in. I keep saying Harry Warden. The Harry Warden persona walking in, and then he hears somebody coming, so he's like, okay, I'm going to hide in a closet. And so basically Irene is having to just hide there and just, you know, not try to say anything, and just basically watching like a train wreck about to happen as the owner, you know, thinks, oh, you're in the closet. Here, let me open it. And then no, Harry's there. And then he just swings that bad boy, does an uppercut with a pickaxe, launching her to the ceiling, into the light fixture, just lights and shatter.
With so much force that the pickaxe, like, gets stuck in the ceiling.
Yeah, and so whenever he picks it down, you just see the poor owner's body just slump to the ground there. And then... This doesn't make any sense, but I think it's just funny and goofy whenever, again, like, she's using the bed frame as a shield.
And it's like huge holes in this bed frame that a pickaxe can easily go through, and he's shoving the pickaxe through it, but she's like dodging it, like, I was like, why are you just... She like specifically gets under it and props it up while butt-ass naked. I can only imagine how many times she had to do that scene. It was like, all right, you're under a bed frame in heels and nothing else, and you have to push it up and then pull it back on top of you and make it look natural. I'm sure that was like the 12th take, and they were like, all right, well, we're going to call it good.
Yeah. It's a lot, and so that's why I give, like, major kudos to the amount of stuff she had to do in this film there. Very much an underappreciated role, I would probably say, for the amount of screen time she gets. But again, it doesn't make sense why she would do that, but it just makes it just all the more fun and goofy there, and just makes it more entertaining. And then we are usually back to another slump of them just kind of discussing stuff. And I don't mind the downtime too much in this film, because again, I do think they need to work on that love triangle again, just to build the animosity. And of course the miners are like hateful towards Tom. They even try to get into a bar fight with him early on.
Oh yeah.
And so there's like a lot of stuff that they try to throw in, a lot of suspects, until they start kind of like really narrowing down as the film continues on there. I will say, like, even though I think the next kill scene is whenever Tom goes to the mine there and basically is going to talk about how he's not selling or whatever. And I do love the moment that whenever Harry locks him in, there's that moment where like they're looking at each other at the same time through the grate. And I think it's actually Jensen Ackles in the suit, because the way that it looks like it was shot, it looks like they split the screen there. So that way it looks exactly the same, and they just move up at the exact same time. Which again gives like another hint that it's like all in his head there with just how in sync they move. And, you know, maybe gives like a window into his thought about like, you know, Jensen, like maybe this is from his mind perspective, like he can't control himself, that Harry's taken over basically, and goes on his killing spree as he's there left helpless, even though it's actually just Harry Warden just taking over him and just killing that dude. And again, I feel like the kill with him was probably one of the weakest there, but overall did its job fine there. And I do like how it provides like an alibi that, again, they were like, oh, let's lock him in, so that way people don't immediately be like, I mean, it's you, dude. It's you. Nobody else was here.
Yeah.
You know, but just the fact that he was wedged in, it makes it look less likely that he did it.
Right, and also kind of like looks like someone was trying to frame him, which kind of gives you the suspicion of, oh, is it Axel or whatever, or is it one of the miners or whatever. But yeah, like when I saw that scene originally, I noticed some holes in it, and I thought it was just like bad plot, you know, like a bad script, because it was like, why didn't the dude on the phone do anything while he was getting locked in the cage?
Yeah,
like, it seems like a very
just
loud
hear
thing.
the loud clang. Yeah,
and then why didn't Tom like yell out and be like, "Watch out!" You know, there's Harry behind you. He's gonna kill you. You know, and like those things were like, yeah, like plot holes to me at whenever it first popped up. But then at the end, it's like, oh, it would make sense that that's just not how it happened, but that's how it happened in his head. You know?
So I really do like, again, that they went about that way, and that they did. And again, I mentioned this before, I will mention this again. I'm happy they showed how he wedged the little slip into the door frame, because otherwise, like, I would have never guessed how in the world he would have done that.
Right.
So I think that's major kudos to the filmmakers. Again, I another thing that I love, that whenever they're sympathizing Tom, like Tom's actually revisiting the mine personally, just trying to confront his fears and just be like, look, you know, Harry's not real, you know, basically. And then he sees Harry Warden as he's led to like the little shack that Axel's dad used to own. That's basically his little getaway spot with Megan whenever they decide to do the hoopy.
The hoopy.
Yes, the hoopy.
Yes.
There.
When they fornicate.
Yes, and so then that just provides extra like bullets for him to use, like just to push Sarah further away from him and to him instead. Because again, he just is feeling that rekindled love for her again. And I do love that Sarah's kind of reminiscing about how good it was previously, and acknowledges that Axel obviously has a lot of flaws. Like, he's pretty short-tempered there, usually pretty hateful, and she already has suspicions of like Megan, which Megan's not subtle with how much she talks about Axel.
Yeah.
Asking her loads of questions there, which I think that ends up being like the next kill that happens is at the grocery store, which I don't know what it is. I don't know if I have a huge fascination with grocery stores. This might be a personal taste. I love the scene that takes place in a grocery store, just like them fighting in the aisles and everything. The back room definitely has a whole different story, but like the main frame of the grocery store, them running through like the chip aisle, everything.
Her hitting him with like a fish or whatever that was.
Yeah, like that piece of meat there, just slapping it upside the head and running. I love that. I thought that was super fun. But whenever they get towards the back, I felt like for the most part it was pretty sound, until I realized she could have probably tried to hit that police alarm earlier.
Yeah.
The only thing I have is maybe she was afraid of like the pickaxe coming through the wall and hitting her, but that was about the only thing I could think of as to why she wouldn't do it immediately.
Also, she's like ordering Megan to do these things that probably she doesn't know there's a key in the desk to open this window and all this stuff. Whenever she could have just had Megan hold the desk while she grabbed the key and opened the window. You know what I mean? But I get it. You're panicking. It's a time of stress.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
but yeah, definitely kind of falls into the horror tropes, especially like the slipping and falling that happens on the way back. You know, it just is like one of those things like, yep, usual horror trope there. Yeah. And I do like, I do think it's funny whenever they're trying to slip Megan out the window first, because like, here, I need to make you safe. Harry Warden, aka Tom, is just outside ready just to pull her out and just take care of business that way.
Yeah.
And so then that leads to the horrific one, which again is like, love you forever there. And then we do get like one of our first callbacks, I would say, is whenever they have like police stationed everywhere there and they're at Axel's home just to make sure that his kid's okay. And they have the house worker there. And her death looks like it's just going to be a regular off-screen kill, you know, because it just appears and you just see him swack. And then there's a whole thing where you hear like the dryer going. It's like, and whenever the police officer goes in, she investigates it, and it's a callback to the original, to whenever the body in the first film was discovered in the laundromat there.
The old lady, yeah.
So I thought that was a fun callback there. I was like, oh, that's nifty. But not only that, meanwhile, Burke, the retired sheriff, is like investigating something because he sees like a light at the end, and then it's like, oh, somebody placed their mining helmet there. And it's not instinctive. There's not an immediate payoff for that. It's not like he looks down and then turns around, then there's Harry Warden.
Which I thought they were going to do.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do too. So I thought that was kind of unique that they gave it a little bit more space there. And so then it's not until he's distracted with the walkie-talkie where she's like, I found the body in the dryer. And then there's that sick uppercut with the pickaxe, and you see like the tip of the pickaxe, you know, poking through his mouth there. And
he rips off the jaw.
Yeah, in 3D you see bits of bone fly towards the screen.
Yeah,
it's a pretty goofy, bloody time. Oh, how could we forget about one of your favorite Blazer dude?
Oh yeah,
yeah, his kill there, where basically
he's drunk and keeps loading and unloading a shotgun. Just keep it loaded next time, pal.
Yes.
Except there won't be a next time because you got owned.
Yeah, and I thought that scene was pretty goofy. And I do love how, you know, he's casually drifting off to another room. Didn't you just see Tom as Harry Warden, like Olympian runner running across and slamming him with the pickaxe?
Which is funny. And that scene definitely upped my like suspicion of Tom, because that happened right after he was like, you know, having a conversation with him, and he's like, be careful, Tom, you know, Harry might come after you next. And he's like, or after you. And it's just like, and then immediately, you know, I was like, well, that's suspicious of you, Tom.
Yeah, that's a little sus. But overall, I thought his kill was fairly okay.
It was fun. Yeah. I thought it was funny that they were like struggling on the ground, and he was like trying to line up the pickaxe, and then he lines up his head with the pickaxe, and then just like curb stomps him into it. But,
yeah, I thought that was fun. I thought it was fun, especially again, really focusing on every possible way you could kill somebody with a pickaxe. I feel like they've exhausted most killing solutions with a pickaxe, which I could appreciate. But yeah, after all those like deaths occur, then there's like the really like big tension build up where again like stuff's being revealed there, and Tom's trying to reach out to Sarah, says, you don't know Axel, you know, I have something to tell you, but you have to come with me.
Yeah, that was like red flag there.
Yeah, red flag. And I do like how she does like take a little bit of initiative, and it's like once she kind of realizes, okay, this is a stupid idea, I need to get out of here, I'll crash the car. And then there's the 3D branch.
Yeah, and they focused on that branch a couple times before it went through the windshield, and I was like, that's going through the windshield.
Yes. that is severing it right there. But I do like that they bring it up. Like they're having phone calls with each other there and just saying like, look, you shouldn't be with him. He's been like in a mental institution for like 7 years, basically. Like you should not trust him. Like, and it's funny because it's at that point in the film where they both realize something about the other counterpart. Tom realizes that Axel's been having this huge affair, and then Axel realizes that Tom has been in a mental institution for the last 7 years. And so again, it's just kind of leading up to that penultimate point there of like, okay, who is Harry Warden between these two?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I also love that that's the scene where she had a cell phone. When the scene like before that involved Sarah was when she was at the supermarket and she didn't have a phone until she got to that back office. But
yeah, that was pretty silly.
yeah, it's like right at that time though. Well, like 2007, 8, 9, something like that. It's like right at that time where not everyone had cell phones, but like people do have cell phones. So I feel like it's a great time to be a script writer to just slip in when somebody has a cell phone or whenever they don't, because whichever one's more convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Axel was rocking that Motorola.
Yeah.
There, but yeah, that's so weird to think about.
Yeah.
That there was a time period where some people had cell phones, some people didn't. So I thought that was pretty nifty. I also like how it's nifty how they try to figure out how we're going to get back to the mines.
Yeah.
And so they just chose it like, oh, you know, Axel's dad, who worked in the mines, had a house nearby the mines. And so that's where he's sneaking away. So I think it's like a nifty way to try to have the finale take place at the mine shaft without it feeling out of place there.
Right, it definitely did make sense. And it wasn't just, I mean, you could easily just be like, oh, well, you know, the Axel's there because he's the sheriff and I need to look over the clues one last time or something, you know, something dumb like that. But I do like that Tom's like, all right, this is the piece of evidence that I'm going to convince you it's Harry all along. And Harry's like, you know, well, I know where they're going. They're going, he's taking her to the mines, and so he's following them. And you know, once she calls him, when she crashes the car, he's like, okay, go to my dad's house or whatever. And that's where she can discover more clues. It was very natural, so I give the script credit for that. But
yeah, it was pretty nice. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of like moments of like, okay, this is like just bad.
Yeah,
you know, there. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. I don't know if I mentioned this whenever they're doing the whole, oh, don't shoot me, shoot him sort of thing. I do like that even though Axel brings up the point of like, you know, he's been in a mental institution for 7 years. He's like, great, thanks. You know, just like, you know, way to be an ass about it.
Right.
There, just kind of like brushes it off there as opposed to like letting that be the one
that sold it.
Yeah, like that's a big thing. Like, oh no, you're right, I'm crazy. Blur.
Oh no, hey man, mental health awareness. Come on, man.
But yeah, definitely pretty solid story and lots of good kills sprinkled throughout. I never felt like they skipped out on the kills or the creativity of them.
Yeah.
Aside from that, Bubby, anything else you want to dissect about this?
Shit, I don't think so, man. We've covered plenty of dissections already.
Yes, we've torn this film limb from limb.
Say that again.
The only thing I will say is I like the credits that they actually showed like themselves going through a mine shaft there,
and then you see Harry slowly approach,
and like at the very end, and then do that pickaxe swing. It's a little thing, but it's like I like that they took the time to actually do that as opposed to traditional black screen.
Especially with a film that's as atmospheric as like this one. Really, I mean, I do feel like the original My Bloody Valentine, the mine was more important. But the mine's such a cool place that, like, take us through the mine. Yeah,
I mean, if I had to say one thing, like there, I definitely felt like the mine wasn't too much of the focus. But then again, I feel like, as much as I love the first film, I felt like the mine was a crutch. Like that was the one thing that just gave it its identity. Yeah. Whereas this film, you know, the mine definitely helps there, but it wasn't like necessary there. So I felt like its use of it was very well done. So I don't really think it deducts any points, and I think it's good that they didn't rely too much on the mine kind of being the sole point of the film.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up with this film. I'm glad you had a much better time with this one.
A bloody good time.
A bloody good time it was. It was indeed. Yeah, much better time with this one than the first one. So how about we talk about the next film we are going to be reviewing here on this podcast? All right, and I'll dish out the teasers. Don't you worry your pretty little hatted head.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Drum roll.
So this film is the third film in the series.
Okay.
It will be celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, whenever it was released in theaters. And it's a good mix of the horror that is with this podcast with a little bit of comedy.
Comedy horror. Okay, 1993. Is it Scream? Well, no, because we haven't seen Scream 2.
Ooh.
Oh, is it Scream 3?
Ooh, no. No. We'll watch
90s?
Scream 2 before that one.
90s. What film was in the 90s? 30-year anniversary of a 90s film.
And I will mention, it is probably one of my favorite films, period, that I've also raved on and on about, and was one of the reasons I really especially wanted to start this podcast.
Oh. Is it Evil Dead 3?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it is. It's the third Evil Dead film.
That's
so,
exciting.
yes, I am super duper excited, which, I mean, I guess that kind of spoils how I feel about the film, but I'm super excited to dive into this film the next episode. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with The Evil Dead, Army of Darkness.
Going back to the past.
Yeah, baby!
Samurai Jack.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.